For decades, wrestling fans have watched the clip. Hulk Hogan stood in the middle of the Pontiac Silverdome. His 24-inch arms flexed. Almost 80,000 people were on their feet. And then, the impossible happened. He lifted André the Giant. He spun him. He slammed the biggest man in wrestling onto the canvas. It's been replayed so many times that it feels like everyone watching that night knew exactly what would happen. But that's the biggest lie about WrestleMania 3. Almost nobody knew. Not the fans. Not most of the locker room. Not even many people working backstage. Because until the very last moment, no one knew if André would allow it. And more importantly, no one knew if his body could handle it. The body slam wasn't just another wrestling move. It was a risk. One mistake could have turned the biggest event in wrestling history into a disaster. One wrong step. One shift of weight, one slip, and two of the biggest stars the business had ever known could have suffered career-ending injuries in front of the largest audience professional wrestling had ever gathered. That's what makes the moment so remarkable. Not because Hulk Hogan was strong enough, but because almost everything had to go perfectly. And the man lying on that mat wasn't the unstoppable giant fans remembered from television. Behind the scenes, André was hurting. Every single day. By 1987, André the Giant had spent nearly 2 decades carrying an impossible weight. To millions of fans, he was a living attraction. A giant who seemed almost mythical. A man who never looked vulnerable. But giants age differently. And André's body was paying the price. His enormous frame put constant stress on his joints. His knees had taken years of punishment. His hips were failing. His back was in pain. Every flight, every hotel, every match, every step toward the ring came with pain that few people ever noticed. He kept smiling for the cameras. He laughed with fans. He shared drinks with friends after the shows. But privately, walking had become hard. Simple movements hurt. Some nights, just climbing into the ring felt like an accomplishment. Years later, many wrestlers who shared locker rooms with André confessed they had realized something heartbreaking. The unbeatable giant was slowly breaking down, yet Vince McMahon needed him more than ever. The World Wrestling Federation wasn't just promoting another event. They were trying to make history. WrestleMania 3 wasn't simply a wrestling show. It was a declaration, a statement that sports entertainment had become a cultural phenomenon. Every seat mattered. Every camera angle mattered. Every headline mattered. Failure wasn't an option. And to ensure success, they needed the biggest match possible, not just in WWF history. In wrestling history, Hulk Hogan, the unstoppable champion, against André the Giant, the undefeated legend. It sounded perfect. There was just one problem. For years, these two men had been friends. Real friends. Long before Hulk Hogan became the face of an empire, André had taken a liking to the younger wrestler. They traveled together, shared meals, shared stories. In the wrestling world, respect wasn't given easily, especially by veterans. But André respected Hogan. That respect became one of the reasons fans believed they would never fight. Why would they? There was no jealousy, no betrayal, no hatred, just mutual admiration. Until one interview changed everything. On an episode of Piper's Pit, Hulk Hogan expected another friendly appearance. Instead, history unfolded. The audience erupted when André walked onto the set. Fans smiled. Seeing the champion and the beloved giant together felt natural. But something was different. André wasn't smiling. Standing beside him was Bobby the Brain Heenan, one of wrestling's greatest manipulators. The sight alone confused everyone. Why would André stand next to Heenan? Hogan looked puzzled. The crowd fell quiet. Before anyone could fully grasp what was happening, Heenan spoke. He accused Hogan of becoming selfish. He claimed Hogan had forgotten the friends who helped him reach the top. Hogan laughed it off. Surely this was a misunderstanding. Then André stepped forward. Without saying much, he tore Hogan's gold crucifix from around his neck. The chain snapped. The cross fell. Gasps echoed through the arena. For a split second, nobody reacted. They simply stared. Did André really just attack Hulk Hogan? The answer came moments later. The Giant accepted Bobby Heenan as his manager. The friendship was over. Just like that, the biggest match in wrestling was born. Fans were devastated. This wasn't just another villain turning against a hero. This felt personal. The betrayal worked because people genuinely believed the friendship was real. And in many ways, it was. That's why the segment remains one of the greatest angles in wrestling history. It didn't rely on elaborate special effects or shocking stunts. It relied on emotion. The audience wasn't reacting because someone got hit. They were reacting because trust had been broken. Suddenly, WrestleMania 3 wasn't just about a championship. It became about loyalty, respect, pride, and proving which icon truly represented professional wrestling. But behind the cameras, another story was happening, one almost no one knew. As the weeks passed, André's health continued to drop. Doctors became increasingly worried. Travel became harder. Standing for long periods wore him out. Every match came with risk. Some folks within the company quietly wondered if the main event could even happen. Others thought of something even more troubling. If André couldn't wrestle a full match safely, how could Hulk Hogan possibly lift him? The world saw a 7'4" giant. Hogan saw something else. A man carrying well over 500 pounds. A man whose body couldn't move the way it once had. A man whose balance had changed due to years of pain. Strength alone wouldn't cut it. Timing had to be spot on. Trust had to be total. And there would be no second chance. Because if Hogan failed, there wouldn't just be an awkward moment. There could be tragedy. Neither man spoke publicly about those fears. That's what professionals did. They protected the illusion. They protected the business. They carried the pressure in silence. Meanwhile, the hype surrounding WrestleMania 3 became unlike anything wrestling had ever seen. Posters popped up everywhere. Television ads ran non-stop. News outlets covered the event. Fans traveled from all over North America. Everyone wanted to witness history. Yet almost no one understood how fragile that history really was. The entire event, the defining moment of Hulk Hogan's career, the moment that would become the symbol of an entire generation, rested on a single move. A move that still wasn't guaranteed. And when March 29, 1987, finally arrived, even Hulk Hogan couldn't be completely sure that the body slam everyone expected would actually happen. The electricity inside the Pontiac Silverdome wasn't normal. It wasn't just excitement. It was expectation. More than 78,000 people had packed into the stadium, filling every seat and aisle. Every camera pointed toward one ring. Long before the opening bell, history was already being made. But no one inside that building knew they were about to witness a moment that would outlast almost every championship, every rivalry, and nearly every superstar that followed it. The ring announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, the crowd exploded. Then came the music. Hulk Hogan emerged from behind the curtain with the WWF Championship around his waist. The roar was deafening. Children screamed. Adults stood on their chairs. Fans waved homemade signs high above their heads. For millions of Americans, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler anymore. He was a superhero. The red and yellow, the bandana, the mustache, the larger-than-life confidence. Everything about him represented the explosion of professional wrestling into mainstream culture. As he walked toward the ring, Hogan did what he always did. He pointed toward the crowd. He cupped his ear. He flexed his famous 24-inch arms. But behind the smile, his mind wasn't celebrating. It was racing. He wasn't thinking about winning. He wasn't thinking about posing after the match. He was thinking about André. More specifically, he was thinking about one moment. Could he actually lift him? Across the arena, the atmosphere suddenly changed. No music could prepare the audience for what they were about to see. When André the Giant appeared, the cheers turned into something else. Not louder, heavier, there was an almost eerie respect that followed him. For nearly 15 years, André hadn't just been another attraction. He had become wrestling's greatest legend. Fans had grown up believing he was unbeatable. Some believed he had never lost. Others thought he couldn't lose. Whether those stories were completely true didn't matter. The myth had grown stronger than reality. And myths are tough to destroy. Standing beside him was Bobby the Brain Heenan. Heenan smiled confidently. He had spent weeks promising that Hulk Hogan's championship reign was about to end, Hogan finally met someone he couldn't just overpower. For once, the fans actually agreed with him. As André got into the ring, every move he made looked deliberate, slow, and painful. Most people in the crowd just thought André's slow movements were part of his act, something he did for the show. But the few who knew the real story understood that this was all about trust and perfect timing, which made the outcome even more impressive and earned the audience's admiration. Every step was agony for André. His knees weren't what they used to be from his days dominating wrestling in the 70s. His back couldn't carry him around the world like it once did. He wasn't just pretending to be an aging giant. He genuinely was one, and that night, it was impossible to hide. The bell rang. No music, no distractions, just silence, then the hushed anticipation of 78,000 spectators. The two legends circled each other. Hogan looked confident but stayed cautious. Charging straight at André would have been a mistake. The Giant reached out and shoved Hogan back with frightening ease. The message was clear: you're still too small. The crowd gasped. Hogan tried again. Another lock-up, another shove. Again, he crashed to the mat. For the first few minutes, André completely controlled the match. Every punch looked brutal, and every headbutt sounded like a car crash. Whenever Hogan tried to fight back, André answered with sheer power. The champion staggered around the ring. For perhaps the first time in his career, Hulk Hogan looked truly overwhelmed. The audience started to wonder something they hadn't before. What if Hogan actually couldn't beat him? That uncertainty about whether Hogan could really overcome André made the match unforgettable, filling the audience with awe and fascination. Today's fans often expect non-stop action, move after move, exciting moments every few seconds. But this wasn't like that. This was a story unfolding. Every second had a purpose, every pause built suspense, and every failed comeback made the audience believe the impossible might just happen. André wasn't rushing. He didn't have to. Giants don't chase. They wait. Eventually, Hogan managed to build some momentum. He started landing punches on André's massive chest. 1, 2, 3. The crowd counted along with every shot. Finally, the Giant stumbled, just one step, but it was enough to make 78,000 people jump to their feet. Maybe, just maybe, the Giant could be hurt. Hogan bounced off the ropes and collided with André. Nothing happened. He bounced off again, another shoulder block. Still nothing. The Giant barely moved. The fans couldn't believe it. Hogan tried a third time, but this time he bounced backward as if he'd run into a brick wall. The stadium fell silent. Everything Hogan had used to defeat every other opponent was useless. Bobby Heenan laughed from ringside, pointing at Hogan as if to say, "I told you so." Then came one of the match's easily forgotten moments. André casually wrapped both hands around Hogan's throat, not dramatically or theatrically, but almost as if lifting the champion was effortless. He squeezed, and Hogan's face turned red. The crowd screamed for Hogan to fight back. He struggled, kicked, twisted, and finally broke free. The arena erupted, not because Hogan had gained control, but because, for a moment, simply surviving felt like a victory. The Giant wasn't just wrestling anymore. He was crushing hope. Minutes passed as Hogan's body absorbed punishment, a massive boot, a crushing elbow, a bear hug that seemed to squeeze every bit of life out of the champion. The audience clapped rhythmically, trying to will Hogan back into the fight. Hogan! 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 Each chant grew louder, seeming to breathe life back into him. Slowly, very slowly, the champion began to fight out of the bear hug, landing one punch, then another, then another. The grip weakened, and the crowd sensed a shift in momentum, belief, and destiny. Hogan finally broke free, hit the ropes, and delivered a clothesline. André staggered. Another clothesline. The Giant wobbled. The impossible suddenly felt possible. But nobody in the Silverdome knew what Hogan was thinking, because as André stumbled, the moment had arrived. There wouldn't be another chance. If he was going to try, it had to be now. Hogan later admitted that everything happened almost instinctively, an act of pure determination and skill that inspired admiration and respect from the audience. Years of strength training, years of practicing, years of imagining this exact scenario all condensed into a few heartbeats. He wrapped his arms around André, locked his hands, took a deep breath, and pulled. For a split second, Hogan's face showed a mix of determination and disbelief, capturing the emotional weight of the moment. Nothing happened. Time itself seemed to stop. The crowd froze, and even the commentators hesitated. Then, André's feet left the canvas just inches, but enough. Hogan adjusted, shifted his balance, turned, and suddenly, the moment Hogan lifted André off the ground was a testament to his determination and skill, filling the crowd with awe and excitement. The Silverdome erupted before the slam even happened. People screamed because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then came the impact. Boom! The ring shook violently, the canvas bounced, and the referee stumbled backward. Flashbulbs exploded throughout the stadium like fireworks. It wasn't just loud, it was unforgettable. For one incredible moment, 78,000 people screamed, their faces a mix of disbelief and pure joy, capturing the emotional magnitude of this iconic moment and solidifying its place in wrestling history. The impossible had become reality. Hulk Hogan's body slam of André the Giant was more than just a move. It marked a turning point in wrestling history, symbolizing the triumph of the underdog and inspiring generations, especially given their storied rivalry that had captivated fans for years. This wasn't in a gym, not in practice, and not in a television studio, but on the grandest stage wrestling had ever built. As the myth of André the Giant's invincibility crumbled, the moment transcended sport, becoming a symbol of perseverance and the power of belief for fans and newcomers alike. And history had been rewritten forever. The impact echoed through the Pontiac Silverdome, not just in the ring but in the hearts of everyone watching. For a brief moment, the stadium wasn't filled with 78,000 fans. It was filled with 78,000 witnesses. Everyone knew they had just seen something they would talk about for the rest of their lives. Even the commentators struggled to find words. How do you describe something people believed was impossible? How do you explain a moment that instantly becomes larger than the sport itself? The answer was simple: you don't. You let the crowd tell the story. The roar refused to die down. It rolled around the Silverdome like thunder. People hugged strangers, some jumped onto their seats, others simply stood with their mouths open, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. But the match wasn't over, far from it. Hulk Hogan was exhausted. Lifting more than 500 pounds had drained every ounce of strength from his body. His chest heaved, his arms trembled, his legs felt heavy. Yet somewhere inside him, he knew one thing: if André stood back up, there might never be another chance. Without hesitation, Hogan sprinted toward the ropes and bounced once. The crowd rose again, every fan knowing what was coming, the most famous finishing move in wrestling. The atomic leg drop. Simple, not flashy, no backflips, no rotations. Just Hogan throwing everything he had into one final strike. His leg crashed across André's chest. The Giant remained motionless. Referee Dave Hebner dropped to the mat. 1. The entire stadium counted with him. 2. Thousands of voices merged into one. 3. The bell rang. For a split second, nobody moved. Then reality finally hit. Hulk Hogan had done it. The undefeated Giant had been beaten. The WWF Championship remained around Hogan's waist. The Silverdome exploded into celebration. Hogan collapsed onto his knees, not because it was part of the show, but because, beneath the persona, he was genuinely spent, just a man who had given everything he had. Every muscle in his body had been pushed to its limit. He grabbed the championship and held it high above his head. The audience answered with another deafening roar. Red and yellow confetti wasn't necessary. Pyrotechnics weren't necessary. The image itself was enough. One man, one championship, one impossible victory. That single picture would appear on magazine covers, posters, VHS tapes, trading cards, documentaries, and highlight reels for decades. It became more than a wrestling photograph. It became the defining image of an era. But while the cameras followed Hogan's celebration, another story quietly unfolded. André the Giant slowly rolled toward the ropes. There was no dramatic outburst, no attack after the match, no excuses. He simply stood. The Giant who had seemed invincible for so many years quietly walked away. It was one of the most understated exits in wrestling history. No words, no complaints, just silence. Looking back today, that silence feels almost poetic. André understood something the audience didn't. He knew his time as wrestling's unstoppable attraction was ending. The business needed a new standard bearer. It needed someone who could carry professional wrestling into a new generation. That man was Hulk Hogan. In many ways, the body slam wasn't Andre's greatest defeat. It was his greatest gift. Because by allowing Hogan to conquer the impossible, he helped create the biggest superstar professional wrestling had ever seen. Years later, countless wrestlers would admit they became fans because of that night. Some watched from the stands. Others watched on television. Children who had never considered wrestling before suddenly believed superheroes were real. Future champions like Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, Dave Bautista, and many others grew up in a world shaped by moments like WrestleMania 3. The event itself became the measuring stick. Every WrestleMania afterward was compared to it, and every main event was asked the same question: will this create a WrestleMania 3 moment? Almost none ever did, because moments like that cannot be manufactured. They happen when preparation, timing, trust, emotion, and history all collide at exactly the right second. Over the years, another debate emerged: how much did Andrew actually weigh? Some claimed 520 pounds, others said 540, and some insisted he was even heavier. The exact number hardly matters. What matters is this: Hogan wasn't lifting a healthy athlete in perfect condition. He was lifting a man whose body had been battered by decades of pain. That required more than strength. It required absolute trust between two professionals. Hogan had to trust Andrew to shift his weight at precisely the right moment, and Andrew had to trust Hogan not to lose his balance. If either man made a mistake, the consequences could have been catastrophic. That level of trust cannot be scripted. It has to be earned. It's also why so many veterans still speak about that match with reverence, not because it featured the most spectacular wrestling or dozens of dramatic moves, but because two icons understood exactly what the business needed. One needed to become immortal, and the other needed to make him immortal. And together, they succeeded. Today, nearly 40 years later, millions of wrestling fans who weren't even born in 1987 still recognize one image: Hulk Hogan with André the Giant suspended across his chest. It has been recreated in action figures, paintings, video games, documentaries, museum exhibits, and Hall of Fame packages. It has transcended wrestling itself. Ask someone to name the most famous moment in professional wrestling history, and chances are they'll describe the body slam even if they can't remember the rest of the match. That's the power of a truly iconic moment. But perhaps the greatest lesson from WrestleMania 3 isn't about strength, championships, or even victory. It's about legacy. Legacies aren't built in comfort. They're built in moments of uncertainty, when no one knows if the risk will pay off, when failure feels just as likely as success. On March 29, 1987, Hulk Hogan took that risk, and André the Giant accepted it. Together, they created a memory that outlived television ratings, title reigns, and even entire generations of wrestlers. The biggest lie about WrestleMania 3 is that everyone knew Hogan would slam Andrew. The truth is that almost nobody knew. Not the fans, not much of the locker room, maybe not even Hogan himself until the very second Andrew's feet left the mat. And that's exactly why, nearly 4 decades later, people still rise to their feet whenever they see it. Because for one unforgettable moment, the impossible didn't just happen. It became immortal.